opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to
Hear the people shouting with glee. Hello and welcome to, or rather welcome back to Dave and Mackie's Shiny Side Out. Coming to you from Australia still, that's nice. We're going to talk about hybrids, human hybrids. It's some crazy stuff. If you can donate, please do, because this is Listener Funded Radio. So it'd be really great if you could. The station, does need electricity. And not just the electric car. Station 2. So if you can, please go ahead and donate. But without further ado, we've been regaling you with stories of hybridization, human-animal hybrids. There's actually recently I saw a very interesting post, Dave. I saw a post, I made it on Facebook, which goes to show how old I am. And yes, I still use email. And in that post, they talked about pigs and how pigs are, in many ways, quite closely related to us, genetically speaking. Same kind of eyes, same kind of skin and hair, even organ similarities, very, very similar. Cannibal tribes of the South Pacific referred to humans, especially Europeans, because they were white-skinned, as long pig. They referred to as long pig. So, and interestingly enough, in Homer's Odyssey, which deals with Ulysses' trip home, which took 10 years. So he spent 10 years besieging Troy, and then because the gods weren't happy that the Greeks destroyed Troy, they pretty much made what would have been a few weeks, the journey of a few weeks from Troy back to I think it was Crete he was from, I could be wrong. Oh, Attica. No, he's from Attica. It turned into 10 years. 10 years. And as part of it, they landed on some island with a witch, and the witch turned some of his crew into pigs. Which, I think they were then slaughtered and eaten. I can't remember the detail, but it's interesting that there are stories.
Whatever makes it go down better.
Whatever makes it go down better, right? But they're certainly, and a lot of religions have a prohibition against eating a pig, such as Judaism and Islam, and usually it's because they're saying it's an unclean animal. But what if? I'm not just speculating here. Speculating. What if, in fact, pigs, as we see them, the domesticated variety, right? What if they are, in fact, truly a human pig hybrid from way back when? Maybe so long ago that it'll be hard to see the interference, as it were, like our chromosome count, for example, right? Which is completely explained away. Anyway, point here is there seems to have been some hybridization, certainly, without a doubt, but also some genetic manipulation in our past. I have no doubt about this, Dave. I am convinced that at some point in the past, we had there was some genetic manipulation both on us and on other species. I have no doubt.
I completely agree. Are you able to reshare that to me, possibly to my Gmail account? Show notes, because I can't open it anymore for some reason.
Okay. Look. Let me open my email, my trusty email, and then see if I've got you here. New email. Here we go. And let's see, Mr. Dunger, if I can. Is it David
right.
Dunger?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's you. Okay. Beautiful. I will send that to you now. And while I do that, why don't you regale our people with some stories here? Oh, come on, where's my attach? I want to attach
all of the stories. All
you
of them.
Stupid.
Every
Why can't I
single
attach?
story.
Ah.
I recall them all, Mickey, all in parallel, and they all start with a premise, and with a moral. That's it. That's all
Morals,
the stories.
premises, insert.
Yeah.
Here we go. Attach file.
So I was really hoping that, because I couldn't even export it out. Wouldn't let me. And
That's very strange.
Like
That's
to
a very
share it.
strange.
I do like the sharing in the document because that means we're looking at the same thing. And when I put in the show for the next show date, there it is. It's there for you too. So I just needed you inside 365 to say share this document with my email address. Done. That's it. And then voila.
I hear you. I'm trying to find it for you.
Yeah, I hear you.
Easiest to find, probably.
It's funny, isn't it?
Let me. Oh no! I've got it. I've got it open. The thing is, in order to share it, I have to put it into a folder from which I can share it. It's like what? I see, and I'm doing that now. Here we go.
Yeah, excellent.
And there we are. And there it is. Eventually, at some point in the near future, when my machine decides, here we go, boom, done, updated, and open and send. And
cool. Looking forward to it.
What? The following files weren't attached because they're empty. You gotta love computers. I love computers. Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about animal and human hybrids and how you feel about them while I'll work on this?
Oh, well, you see, you go back far enough in time and you'll find that we've been doing it. Either us or, let's call it the Anunnaki, has done it. It's been, or if you go anywhere in the world, you'll find an example of it. And I know we've talked about this ad nauseum, but it's the first, actually, a part of, instead of Anubis and all of those ones in ancient Egypt history, the first one that I'd heard about, which was a conspiracy, was the chimpanzee. And it was an Alex Jones reference. He was talking about it. And it was he was being interviewed on a show about it. Then they went to the very lab and they got, thrown away. I mean, not allowed in. They were prevented from seeing anything in there. And then they did half the story just standing on the roadside out the front, which is really cool, actually. I thought that was great. So they went to some place that didn't want them to go in and wouldn't answer any questions. So it's typical Alex Jones, very young Alex Jones, by the way, in that clip. So if it were possible, if you had a dream of being able to create a hybrid just for yourself, thinking about all the possibilities, what would you make? Would you simply want to give yourself, say, maybe emu legs or something that can run very fast? Emu legs. There's a TV show reference. If you type in emu legs and Canyon, was it Canyon Country? No, something country. I forget what the term was. And there was an Australian TV show, and he called his own daughter, emu legs. Anyway, what would you do?
Okay, there you go. What would you do?
What would you do? Would you give yourself, maybe like a fish, half fish at the bottom, so you could win at the Olympics? You'd be the fastest human. I can see it now. Let me see if I can open it. Oh, is it an attachment, Becky? Oh my goodness, it is. It's real.
I'm not going to share anything because that sounds like. But we are going to the text now, and we are talking about scientists playing God managed to create a human chimpanzee hybrid. This article is from October 23, 2021, written by Andre Tapalaga. Tapalaga, and it's from the website historyofyesterday.com. Historyofyesterday.com. Now, this is what happened. For many years, during the 20th century, scientists performed many horrid and unethical experiments on animals, trying to combine them with human genes in order to create an abomination they call a hybrid between humans and animals. Such experiments have been kept secret for many years, but due to an incident that took place in 2018, many answers have come to light about the origin of these experiments. An evolutionary psychologist by the name of Gordon Gallup stated that in the 1920s, the first humanzee was born at a secret facility, or research facility, secret, in Florida. Even if he was not born in time, he was told so by his professor, who had worked thousands of hours researching such a hybrid entity and its possibility to life. He also says that the humanzee was killed soon after its birth due to the pressure they received for the experiment. This is the closest that scientists have come to playing God, and this is definitely going too far. This is closest that we know about, at least. Now you can see here that this happened at the same time as the Russians were trying to do the same thing. We spoke about Dr. Ivanov, or rather Professor Ivanov, last week. So this is around the same time frame. So 1920s in Florida, excuse me, and 1920s and then 30s as well for Professor Ivanov, both in Africa and in the Soviet Union. But Dave, what is a humanzee?
This is combining the genes and cells of humans and chimpanzees to form an entity that is half human and half chimpanzee. From all the animals, a chimpanzee has the most similar organism to a human one, with a 99% of coding DNA sequences in common. Therefore, it had the highest chances for success in such an experiment. Now, you would think that this was a lab-born hybrid, however, actually wasn't. Technology at the times, especially in the scientific field, was not so advanced. And as we are talking about 100 years ago, so the way that Professor Gallup explained it occurred was as follows. The scientist inseminated a female chimpanzee with human semen from an anonymous donor. The chimpanzee, you can see, I'm showing the image at the moment. Scientists were surprised to see that not only did the female chimpanzee get pregnant, but she also gave birth to a healthy humanzee, or a chimpanzee. Professor Gallup named this hybrid a humanzee. However, upon seeing this abomination in front of their eyes, the scientists working on this project were pressured by moral and ethical issues, therefore decided to kill the humanzee. What happened after, or what abilities this new hybrid had, is unknown. There are rumors that the hybrid was able to say a few words in English and grasp the use of objects around him or her much quicker than most chimpanzees, confirming that her IQ was much higher than expected. Meki.
Wow, that's a whole different thing if you think about that there for a second.
You've got to
right?
imagine
And all of a sudden,
that the age of this chimpanzee or humanzee would have been sufficient enough to learn these words and say them.
Well, that's the thing, right? And if you look, there's a picture here in part of our show notes.
Yes.
And the the humanzee or chimpanzee comes about, it's about chest height to a human. Don't know how tall the human is, but it looks like a fully grown chimpanzee. So this wasn't a baby chimp. Mm-hmm. This was probably 5, 6, 10, maybe 10 years old. I don't know, but clearly not just a recent
not
birth.
An infant. No.
Not an infant. Now, the first known attempt here. However, this wasn't the first attempt to create such a hybrid. The first recorded attempt, or better said, attempts, were by Ilya Ivanovich Ivanov, we spoke about last week, the Russian biologist. In 1910, he presented the idea to the World Congress of Zoologists in Vienna, who seemed to have approved of this unethical enterprise. Interestingly enough, he received a study grant of $10,000, which is, well, the article is from, it's about $300,000 today, so that's not too bad, from the Soviet Financial Commission to carry out his experiment before being approved by the Soviet Academy of Sciences. Talk about inflation, though, right? Mm. The only thing that made the Soviet Academy of Science approve the experiment was his reasoning in the pitch he gave. It is not sure what Ivanov's true intent was with the experiment, but in his pitch he said that with this experiment he would try to prove once and for all Darwin's theory of evolution, which defines that we have evolved from chimpanzees. Some researchers state that the experiment was done at the order of Joseph Stalin, who was in the look to create. Who was looking to create a new type of soldier that would be insensitive to pain. Now, why is the Darwin theory of evolution important to the Soviets? Because communism, by and large, thinks of religion as the opium of the masses. They think religion was just there to keep the workers in a lulled in a false sense of security, as well as keep them asleep, so they could be docile. So they wanted to do away with religion, right? And of course, the two biggest battles of the 19th century were, number one, the Industrial Revolution, as opposed to the old way of life, right? And the second one, of course, was the theory of evolution versus the religious dogma. This was the second biggest battle of the 19th century, and you have to understand that while people had thought about this before, and Darwin wasn't really the first who had thought about it this way, right? He was probably the best published, though. And he went, to the Galapagos Islands, and he wrote a few interesting, books, etc. But it was a massive shift of thinking, and the Bolsheviks, the communists, embraced it because it took away the power of the church. If we are evolved from apes, where does that leave your God? Right? And they saw the church as complicit and in league with, I guess, the oppressors, the capitalists, the owners of the capital, the kings, the queens, etc., that were oppressing the people. So take away the power of the church and give it to science, and you have you're halfway there. So that's why it was important for the Soviets to prove that I guess man and ape either come from each other or come from the same branch of the same tree. Now, to go back to the text here, Ivanov started inseminating 3 female chimpanzees with human sperm through artificial insemination, a procedure that we learned last week he had perfected, and it was the first one to have perfected in the world. The only difference was that none of the female chimpanzees achieved pregnancy. He did some research to discover why none of the female chimpanzees achieved pregnancy, and he found that due to insemination, there was a 1/6 chance of pregnancy, so 1 in 6. So if he had tried with 6 chimpanzees, then he might have had a success. In 1920, he kept trying, but still wasn't able to get any results. In the same decade, he decided to look at the project from a different perspective. What if human females could be or would be inseminated with ape sperm? This experiment was almost carried out in 1929, but luckily, well, it's a bit of value judgment here, which I was, this is not me speaking, this is the text, but luckily was cancelled as Ivanov's last orangutan had died. This time, even if the experiment never took place, even the Soviet government decided that Ivanov simply crossed the line, and therefore he was exiled to Kazakhstan to work on the Kazakh Veterinary Zootechnical Institute. Now, this is the author speaking. May I remind you that this is only one of the many Russian scientists who tried to play God in the 20th century. The closest that came to this, or the experiment that came closest to this, was the 2-headed dog experiment by Dr. Vladimir Demikov in 1959. You might know it better as the Pavlovian as well. Actually, no, sorry, this is different. This is different. And then, of course, there's the Pavlovian experiment where Dr. Pavlov chopped off a dog's head and still was able to elicit the saliva response. In any event, what's next?
Humanzees in the shadows for years. Since 1929, there were no attempts that anyone knows of, even if it is more than likely that a lot more sick scientists were trying to achieve the same result that the research facility in Florida achieved in 1920. Or maybe they were too busy creating biological weapons for the Cold War. From a chronological perspective, the next attempt was in 1967 by the People's Republic of China, according to Xi Yongzheng, the head of a hospital in Shenzhen. Once again, not much information is available, only assumptions and rumors that the experiment would have actually worked, managing to breed a hybrid able to fluently talk a language that it was taught from a young age, showing cognitive abilities, in other words. What is interesting is a performing chimpanzee from the 1970s by the name of Oliver, who became quite popular around the world. Oliver had the ability to understand humans very well and listen to very specific commands. That was part of the act. But even how well you would try to train an animal, you would not get him to listen to absolutely every command. Apart from this, many people assumed that he seemed to act more like a human than an animal, although this may be an effect of only hanging around humans for a prolonged period of time. Based on all this information, people actually believed that he was in fact a hybrid between humans and chimpanzees. This was actually used as an attraction for his performance in the 1980s. It attracted so much attention that in 1986 the University of Chicago brought him for analysis. It turned out that he wasn't a hybrid. He was just a normal chimpanzee that happened to be very talented. The result from this analysis, as well as further research, can be found in the American Journal of Physical Anthropology. In 1981, China gave the experiment another try and impregnated another female chimpanzee with human sperm. The female chimpanzee became pregnant but died 3 months later due to health complications. Yet, to those that may think that this is the load of rubbish, the Chinese Academy of Sciences has actually confirmed the existence of both experiments from 1969 and 1981. As mentioned before, science has no shame for its unethical work, as in their minds it is all towards our own benefit. Over the 1990s, there were many other types of experiments that tried to combine human cells with pig or sheep cells. There are rumors that in 2019, a team of researchers from various medical universities in Spain managed to produce the first half-human, half-monkey hybrid. These so-called unconfirmed reports are coming from the Salk Institute for Biological Studies in the United States. Some experts say that this may be the missing link within the theory of evolution, the ability for apes or monkeys to breed with humans, in which a way would make sense if technically based on the theory they are our ancestors. Nevertheless, it does not matter how unethical this is, as the future surely awaits biological breeding between different species.
Gotta say something here, though, just to clarify something. Now, the text is wrong. What a shock. Chimpanzees, orangutans, gorillas, bonobos, none of them are considered our ancestors. Clearly, they are contemporaries, and clearly if you follow evolutionary biology, we all came from the same branch, pretty much, of evolution, as it were.
Way
they developed
back.
in one way.
Yes.
Oh yeah, much further back. They developed one way, and we developed another way. If you buy into the evolutionary theory, that is, right. So no, we are not evolved from chimpanzees. That's not at all what is scientifically held these days. In fact, we know for a fact that a lot of the, and we spoke about this before, but a lot of the, and this is important here, I guess, because we're talking about hybridization, a lot of the species that we considered ancestors, foremost, of course, Neanderthal, but, Denisovan human, Cro-Magnon, Florensis, and there's a couple of other mysterious ones. They were not our ancestors at all. Though I learned that as a child in school, Neanderthal was our ancestor. Not true. Not true. Our contemporary, yet again, with whom we interbred. So we did not evolve from Neanderthal, but we rather coexisted and interbred. In the same way that today, a French man could marry a Spanish woman, arguably both human, right? And in those days, Neanderthal would have been considered just as human, in my opinion, as Homo sapiens, as Cro-Magnon, etc., etc. And if you look at the human races as they exist today, there are differences, of course, in morphology, in even in bone structure, in organ structure. So we're not all identical, right? As human beings, we're not. Otherwise, we'd be clones. But there are racial differences between us, right? That are more than skin deep in some instances for some things. That's a fact. I mean, it's just how it is. But back then, those differences were more pronounced. So, nonetheless, we still interbred.
Yep. So we have. I've got an image on the screen, and this is a race of mankind chimpanzees, an anatomy of the RCP, and this shows that the humans have 46 chromosomes, so 23 pairs, and the bonobo, the chimpanzee, the gorilla, and the orangutan all have 48 base chromosomes, or 24 base pairs. And this is the same, the thing that no one can answer yet. At some point, we compressed those, and that's also the same point at which you could say the Anunnaki had an influence in those stories about kind of creating us from what there was. I think it all makes sense.
Yes. Well, in fact, to your point, what the Anunnaki, etc., and so forth. I mean, we call them Anunnaki because that's what the Sumerians called them, right? Is this what they were called? No, it's not what they were called, because what it means is those that came from heaven, or those that came from the sky, or things like that, right? That was definitely not what they would have called themselves, right? And similarly, the Igigi weren't called the Igigi, etc., etc. But the point here is this: it seems that in the dim and distant past, before we started writing things down, before several cataclysms, I want to say as well, there seems to have been some interference with us. I don't think we're the original Homo sapiens race, if you will. I think there were others before us. I don't think the Anunnaki were aliens, as in coming from another alien planet. I don't think so at all, because their biology, by definition, would be completely incompatible with ours. I've argued that point before. I'm not going to argue it here again. So I do believe that they are from here, the Anunnaki, right? Either from Earth, Mars, or who knows, right? But they're definitely from here, and we are of them. Okay, and if you look at how many species have existed on this planet, I think it's only 1 or 2% that have survived to this day. Of all the species that have ever existed, only 1 or 2% are still alive today. Not even, right? Yeah. Massive cataclysms. So the point here is this, though, right? Dave is right. There seems to be, at some point, some interference that took place with us for various reasons, both in shortening our lifespan, but also, that was the first one, I think, shortening our lifespan. The second one, I think, was to take away our telepathic abilities and eventually, leaving us as we are today, somewhat crippled in many ways. Of course, we have no recollection of this, no memory, but there are indications. There are breadcrumbs that you can follow. There are indications, as I said, that would point you to what I've just said. If you look closely, right? If you're not discouraged by becoming a laughingstock, new ideas are never accepted easily. It takes a generation, sometimes two, for a new idea to be accepted by the rest of humanity. And unfortunately, at this point, the parasites, and maybe for a while now, I shouldn't say at this point, the parasites have been guiding human knowledge gathering in a certain direction, steering us away from certain other things by ridiculing it or outright destroying the field of endeavor. And even the people that dare to, let's say, question the status quo. This goes in a variety of different fields, from free energy research to ancient civilization research, and actually it permeates almost everything: archaeology, biology, the hard sciences, if you will. It's really quite interesting. I was going to talk about that, but we'll talk about that on Tuesday. I was going to talk about super determinism and free will, but we won't have time. Okay, so now let's get back to the text. Now, there are actually 5 chimeras that have been created by science. This is a fact. And a chimera is an organism with genetic material from 2 or more sources. So it could be 2 or more, right? Experiments in the field may save lives, but are ethically controversial, as we can imagine, especially now with the CRISPR technology, which we outlined available to us. This article was written by Desiree Schneider, August 11th, 2019, and it was modified the following day. And the first one here is a human monkey, or human monkey chimera. Last week, and this is again August 2019, so this would have been beginning of 2019. Last week, researchers led by Spanish scientist Juan Carlos Ispizua Belmonte announced they had created the first human monkey chimera embryos in China, and we just discussed this earlier. The purpose of the experiment is to investigate ways of using animals to grow human organs for transplants. The organs could be genetically matched by taking the recipient cells and reprogram them into stem cells. Now, before we go on, this is important for the conversation, because this is the key reason these hybrids are being created, or at least that's the reason given as to why they should be created. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Island, Dave.
No.
It's actually quite interesting. So this is an island where people seem to live in a utopian-like society. They don't have to worry about anything, and there's a lottery. Now they're being told the story that the world has gone through an apocalypse. Outside the island, the planet is destroyed, but they're building a new kind of Eden, if you will, right, on another island, and if you win the lottery, then you can go to that island. And that's a very interesting. What's her name? Black Widow. What's the actress? She's in it, and also
some other people.
I'm terrible, but look, there's some. It's high production value and really good acting, actors and actresses. But what turns out, this is all complete nonsense, right? Now, I don't want to destroy the movie for you, but it's important that I explain what the movie's about. The movie's it's just a cloning facility. That's all it is. So people outside in the world, which is today, but maybe 30 or 40 years in the future, have given this company their cell material, their DNA, and they have clones living on the islands in case they need organs. Right, an accident or liver failure or whatever, then their clone wins the lottery, is killed, and the organs are transported to them to save their life. So that's the long and short of the story. Of course, the protagonist managed to escape from the island, and he actually confronts himself, or the person he was cloned of. And anyway, that's the movie. But my point here is this: where do you draw the line? So let's say you create these. This is where the ethical problems come in. Let's say you create these human monkey or even human pig kind of creatures, right? What if they're intelligent enough to understand what's happening to them? What if they're intelligent enough to be self-aware? What if they're intelligent enough to be a person? Never mind what they look like. Mm-hmm. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is a really slippery slope here. Well, and of course, the movie I just described is... I'm
not an animal!
That's right. It's a pigman, Jerry! It's a pigman! So, Seinfeld made fun of the whole thing as well. But the thing here is this, right? Now, of course, the movie I described, The Island, has taken this to its final and most horrific kind of conclusion, where we're actually cloning human beings as organ banks, essentially. Right? That's the purpose in life. They have no other purpose. They're kept on the island, and then under the pretense of the lottery, they're really happy when they win the lottery. Oh, win the lottery! Hooray! You know, little do they know what happens to them. So that's what I'm saying. This is across everything here, and I think Dave is going to tell us about the human pig now.
I certainly am. In 2017, scientists from the Salk Institute in California, led again by Ispucia Belmonte, tried to grow the first embryos containing cells from humans and pigs. The process proved to be more challenging than expected and was very inefficient. From 2,075 implanted embryos, only 186 developed up to the 28-day time limit for the project.
At which point they are legally obliged to terminate them. We'll go on to that a little later, when we find out that in 2019, Japan, or to 2020 actually, at the height of the COVID pandemic, Japan decided to do away with that statute.
Mm-hmm.
This I find fascinating, Dave. This is human.
Yeah.
Now, chimeras also exist in the natural world, so this is not created. This just happened. There have been a number of documented human cases. Most recently, American singer Taylor Moole discovered she was carrying genetic material from her fraternal twin sister, whose egg had fused with hers in their mother's womb. This explains a large section of darker skin on her torso. It comes from her sister's DNA.
Wow, yes. So now we have a virus chimera. Chimeras can help to fight diseases. In 2017, Portuguese researchers created a chimera virus, a mouse virus with a human viral gene, which enables them to investigate new ways to create cancer caused by human herpes virus infection. The team found out that when the cancer-causing virus loses a protein called LANA, it also loses its ability to cause cancer.
Fascinating. Look, no one is saying that there aren't a lot of worthwhile and necessary and extremely beneficial applications. But I guarantee you, there's, for every ethical and necessary and good application, there'll be 1,000 that are not even close to any kind of standard or ethical oversight as we go forward. Just saying. Finally, human and mouse. In March, Japan loosened its guidelines, lifting a 2-week limit. This is what I was talking about. Lifting a 2-week limit on the growth of human-animal chimeras and allowing the transplantation of chimeric embryos or hybrids into animals, but not humans. And I'm saying, not the article, not yet. Pending approval, a Japanese stem cell scientist, Hiromitsu Nakauchi, plans to insert human stem cells into mice or rats in an attempt to grow human pancreas in the animal. As a safeguard, if too many human cells creep into the rat's brains, the experiment will be stopped. I'm just thinking of this bouncer with a clicker and standing at the brain blood barrier. Yeah, listen, I know more human cells. Sorry, can't come in. Hey, what? But we'll spend a bit more time on this Japanese loosening its guidelines. It's a lot more sinister than it sounds.
I do remember the human ear being grown on a pig. And on a mouse.
That happened.
Yes, actually happened. Now, genetic engineering and human-animal hybrids, how China is leading a global split in controversial research, published September 3, 2019. Author of this article is David Lawrence, and the disclosure statement. David Lawrence does not work for, consult, own shares in, or receive funding from any company or organization that would benefit from this article, and has disclosed no relevant affiliations beyond their academic appointment. Okay, having said that, If you want to conduct groundbreaking but contentious biological research, go to China. Last year, according to the article, which was published when, Mickey? In 2019.
2019, yep.
Yes. Chinese scientist He Jiankui announced he had created the world's first gene-edited human babies, shocking the world at the time when such practice is illegal in most leading scientific nations. More recently, US-based researcher Juan Carlos Izpucia Belmonte revealed he had produced the world's first human monkey hybrid embryo in China to avoid legal issues in his adopted country. Yet, if China is fast becoming the world's capital of controversial science, it is not alone in producing it. More babies produced using CRISPR gene editing technology are now planned by a scientist in Russia, where another researcher is also hoping to conduct the world's first human head transplant. And Japan has finally lifted its own ban on human-animal hybrids. The world is rapidly moving towards a two-tier system of cutting-edge medical research, broadly divided between countries with minimal regulation and those that refuse to allow anything but the earliest stages of this work. The consequences of this split are likely to be significant, even potentially affecting your own access to healthcare. The births of CRISPR babies in China led to an uproar among the scientific community, which criticized the scientists and inspired calls for a halt in any CRISPR research on human embryos. Just remember, this is 2019. This is right before the pandemic. I was putting it out there. In around 30 countries, gene editing of human embryos is already banned outright or at least tightly controlled. I wonder what tightly controlled means. For example, in the UK, only a handful of research groups have been granted a license to conduct experiments, and certainly not with any aim of bringing an embryo to term. But in most countries, things are less clear. The Chinese establishment was quick to condemn He's work and declare it illegal. And some commentators have made the point that despite outside perceptions, Chinese science is far from unregulated. Yet the fact remains that he is the scientist's first name, was able to conduct the work unimpeded, with evidence suggesting he may have received state funding. Meki.
With the technology moving as quickly as CRISPR, many nations will not have had the time nor expertise to develop a comprehensive stance. As a result, it seems likely that we won't be able to avoid a two-tier system for this kind of research. Nations with developed regulation for biotechnology will be able to adapt more quickly and easily to the latest advances and put restrictions in place. Other states will scramble to keep up, leaving scientists to proceed without having to consider the ethical or social implications of the work. Hurrah! I use cadavers in my car because I can use the multi-car lane. Yay! I get to hospital quicker. And that's assuming all governments want to restrict this kind of research, which they may not. This is incredible. We have seen what happens when there is this kind of international disconnect with other biotechnologies. Medical tourism, which is true, has become a boom sector within the healthcare industry. People travel from all over the world to private clinics that provide or claim to provide stem cell therapies unavailable in their home countries. There have been high-profile cases of people traveling from the US to Mexico in order to skirt national laws and access mitochondrial replacement therapy. Same goes for dental work and cosmetic surgery.
Yeah, cosmetic
but of
surgery.
course, But of course, you know, when you start talking about genetic manipulation, it's a whole different level. So it's safe to assume that those with the means to do so, of course they will. Not might. It says here might try to access gene editing abroad when it's not available in their own countries, right? There's no doubt that they will do that. Of course they will. In fact, that's probably the least of what they will try to do. Perhaps they will avoid passing on a non-heritable condition they carry. So if you've got a heritable genetic condition, you can edit out. Then of course, why wouldn't you? Of course you would. Of course you would. And with home DNA testing kits becoming widespread, though they may not be accurate, the number of people wanting to edit their genome before having children is likely to increase. I mean, think about that for a second, right? Self-editing. You're sitting somewhere in the dark. I see people sitting in the dark, the green glow of some kind of light. And there's this machine, and, they have got strands of the DNA on the machine, and they're snipping and snapping that way. It's like a great image for a horror movie. A lack of or loose medical regulations also tends to produce predatory clinics that charge huge amounts for what sounds like wonder cures, but might be, at best, a sugar pill, or at worst, something actively harmful. And perhaps, worst of all, regulatory problems might contribute to destroying the reputation of promising developing medical technologies. The more nasty incidents that are attributed to an unregulated therapy, the less and less willing people will be to support legitimate medical trials. This kind of two-tier system of medical regulation could also lead techniques such as gene editing to become much more culturally accepted in some countries. Our society continues to struggle with xenophobia and racism, so we may also find prejudices and legal dilemmas developing for genetically engineered humans. Never mind human-animal hybrids. And who is anyone to stop? Let's say, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, but let's say, Austria. Let's take Austria. I'm not picking on them specifically. But what if they decide, we want only blonde, blue-eyed, white-skinned children? Thank you very much. Who would stop them? How could you stop them? You couldn't. That's what would happen. And in no time at all, you would have very distinct racial features. We might even have homogeneous races across. This is a horror show, no matter which way you look at it. Anyway, would people born using technologies such as CRISPR be allowed to visit or immigrate to countries where their very creation was illegal? That's a very good question. Never mind that you're an illegal immigrant into the United States. Let's say the United States says you can't do any of this, right? You can't do it. It's forbidden. It's completely illegal. And then let's say a CRISPR baby from, China goes to America, right? And they find out that it's a CRISPR baby. What would happen then? They're not only are they, potentially illegally in the country, which they could be, but their very existence might be illegal. This is grotesque. Would it be illegal for them to have their own children and spread their genetically altered material? This kind of conflict between international human rights legislation and domestic policy is yet to be tested, but could have grave consequences. I just want to say here again, and then I'll hand it to Dave. We're once again at a crossroads. Once again, there's technology which is completely running away from us, and we are limping behind trying to figure out how we can control it. By law or regulations or common decency, it doesn't really matter, right? But we just open the box, and all the genies come out, dancing on our nose, and then we're thinking, maybe we should have figured out how to close the box and get all the genies in or back in before we opened it. That would have been a better idea, Dave. Off you go.
So just a reminder to everyone, we are not making this up. So Pfizer and Beam, two different companies, enter exclusive multi-target research collaboration to advance novel in vivo based editing programs for a range of rare diseases. Now that's CRISPR. Just letting you know what that is. So they did that in 2022. That is so important for us to understand that it's now a thing. When the article was written, it wasn't. It was conjecture. We were, maybe CRISPR this, maybe CRISPR that. CRISPR we know is something, but what is it? Don't really know. Is it going to change the world? Yes, is the answer straight away. Yes, I'm just going to go with yes. And Meki's right when talking about, if there's two, like a disparity between two sets of groups or groups of countries who have legal conditions around CRISPR research, there's still going to be thousands that don't. Thousands of labs working on it. So, worsening health inequality. On the other side of the divide, if countries with strong relations move too slowly to allow treatments that may be life-saving or disability preventing, it could worsen health inequality. We already have a serious global problem with distributive justice, the ways in which services or technologies are only accessible to the privileged. And if a particular illness could be prevented through CRISPR, is it right that someone should have to risk their child developing the disease just because they cannot afford to travel to a country where this technique is currently legal? I put currently in there. Unfortunately, the obvious solution, internationally agreed standards and regulations, may be a pipe dream. We have consistently failed to find global consensus on gene editing issues, just as with embryo research, or for that matter, Meki outside the text, AI development. Even if it is possible to reach common ground, developing and implementing mutually acceptable conditions that are flexible to handle flexible conditions. I love that. Developing and implementing mutually acceptable terms that are flexible enough to handle the inevitable further technological process will take many years. For now, proposals for a concerted effort to keep track of gene editing research may be the best way we can do it. It's difficult to predict, says the author, what could happen in the meantime, but it seems likely that more and more gene editing and other controversial practices will take place in a variety of regulated and unregulated circumstances. Sadly, it may be the case that little progress is made until the types of problems outlined above become all too real.
I completely agree with that last sentence. There's nothing, we have never done anything practically, Dave. Nothing, ever. Not ever. There hasn't been a single instance. There hasn't been a single instance in human history that I'm aware of where we have said, "Oh, hang on there a second, Joe. Don't pull on that thing. Wait, let's just think about the repercussions and unintended consequences." yeah, let's do that. Never, ever. We blew up the first nuclear weapon not knowing if we would set ablaze the atmosphere. Think about that for a second. Think about that, just for a second. Think. What could happen? Well, we could, burn up the atmosphere. Oh, okay. What chance? What is the chance? Oh, it's a, 0.001 chance. That's not good. What do you mean it's not good? It should be a 0% chance. Well, it's not. What you gonna do?
Zero.
That's where we are. That's where. Yeah, that's it. It's not zero. Zero should be. Let it be zero. No. So these things happen, right? And we are literally, and I don't keep saying this, I know, but we're the monkey that puts its hand into the hole to see if there's a snake. Is there a snake? Ah, no, not this one. Ha ha. Oh, yes, there is. Oh, no. So that's who we are. And this technology, and not just this, Dave is right, AI is another one, right? Gene editing, AI, all the tech that is coming, it's sort of culminating, the cyber organ, because we're approaching this we're approaching the singularity in my mind, or the convergence of the human and the non-human from a variety of different angles, right? There's the biological,
convergent.
There's the completely, and it is so complex, right? And the things we could do to ourselves, our children's children, the environment, animals, creatures within the environment, is so far-reaching. Say, there's this stuff we used in fire retardant agents, right? It's a fire retardant agent, forever chemical. We thought a forever chemical.
It's tremendously effective as a fire retardant.
Yeah.
But it's not great
100%.
for people's health.
It's not great for people. But and then we found out about that, but then we didn't want to know about it because then you get sued and all kinds of things. So now it's almost everywhere, right?
Yeah.
There's no acceptable level of it either. It's like sometimes you can say that's the acceptable level. There's no acceptable level.
Isn't it PFAS or something like that?
Yeah, they're PFAS, that's right.
Yeah.
There's no acceptable level for these chemicals to exist in your body. They're not allowed in your body at any level, right? For health reasons. But we went ahead and we invented all this new stuff that didn't exist before, right? We were like, oh, wow, we're so good. And you know, some of it, in my opinion, is retro-engineered. And that's the music. So, we've come to the end of another Shiny Slate Out with David Mackey. Do catch us as Plato's Cave on Tuesday morning and Thursday morning Eastern US time at 7. But until next time, Mackey's going to say be safe. Be safe!
There he goes.